Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Fun Astrology podcast for Thursday, November 27th. Happy Thanksgiving if you're here in the US. Today has a very quiet sky in terms of number of exact aspects, but this is one of those days where not much moves, but everything in you might shift. Let's get into it. Today's headliner, Saturn stations direct in Pisces after being retrograde since July 12th. And this is a big one because the retrograde began at the first degree of Aries, the zodiac's starting gun. Before Saturn slipped back into Pisces, since July, we have been learning a hard truth. You can't start the next chapter without finishing the emotional work of the last one. Pisces asks for closure, forgiveness, compassion, and understanding. And Saturn asks for structure, discipline, and accountability. So this retrograde has been kind of an emotional apprenticeship, a summer and fall of looking at what dissolves, what endures, and how we're meant to build our future with more spiritual maturity. Now Saturn turns direct, and the tide that has been pulling back begins to push forward again, but softly. Pisces isn't a sign to shout, it whispers. And Saturn in Pisces builds slowly, through intuition, through honesty, through humility. This is the kind of direct station where you might quietly say to yourself, I see what the lesson really was. And from that, you finally know how to move forward. While Saturn stations, it sits in a grand water trine with Venus in Scorpio and Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. This is beautiful, deeply supportive energy. It's emotional alchemy. Venus in Scorpio is emotional depth, truth-telling intimacy. Jupiter in Cancer is emotional generosity, the part of us that protects and nurtures. Saturn in Pisces is emotional maturity, the ability to give form to feeling. Together, they create a kind of grand reservoir in the emotional body. Old memories become wisdom, old wounds become understanding, and old patterns soften and reshape. And here on Thanksgiving, this trine turns gratitude into something powerful, not performative, not a list you're trying to complete before dinner, but a foundation, something weight bearing, something Saturn would approve of. Today isn't about what you have, today is about who you have become, especially since July. People often think of gratitude as light, fluffy, or nice to have, but astrologically, gratitude is very Saturnian. It requires consistency, perspective, emotional discipline, and the maturity to acknowledge the good alongside the hard. Gratitude is not passive today, it's structural. It's the beam in the middle of the house that quietly holds the roof up. It's the thing you return to when you are rebuilding a chapter of your life or preparing for a new one. And remember, Saturn does not return to Aries until February 13th. A new cycle is coming, but today's direct station is all about the foundation. Today says your future doesn't start from zero, it starts from everything else you've already learned. Now, let's talk about the moon because it adds to the interesting flavor into this deeply watery chart. The moon spends a lot of the day in Aquarius, the sign of perspective, community, and the larger systems and patterns we're a part of. It makes a square to Uranus in Taurus at 12:53 p.m. Eastern, and that square begins a void of course period that lasts an hour and 31 minutes. Aquarius moon square Uranus can feel like a sudden shift in mood, a flash of intuition, a jolt of clarity, or a desire to break from the routine. And honestly, on Thanksgiving, while people are cooking, coordinating, socializing, and trying not to burn the dinner rolls, this could show up as an unexpected moment of emotional independence. Maybe saying, I need a minute, or let me step outside, or maybe I'm just having a sudden insight. So keep in mind from 12:53 p.m. to 2:23 p.m., The moon is void of course, the perfect invitation to pause, rest, breathe, or simply let things be. At 2:23 p.m., the moon enters Pisces, joining the watery, emotional landscape of Saturn's direct station, meaning that the day ends gentler than it begins, softer and much more reflective. It's a beautiful way to settle into the evening, especially if you're with family, reflecting on lineage, healing, or forgiveness. If today had a message, it would be gratitude is what helps you recognize the worth of the path that you have already been walking. Saturn going direct is what helps you walk in the next part with clarity. Today isn't loud astrology, it's meaningful astrology. So, wherever you are, however you're spending this day, I hope you find a moment that feels like you have a strong foundation under your feet. A moment where something inside of you says, I know what I'm building from here. So happy Thanksgiving, you all. I will be back with you next week in December. So until then, much love. Talk soon.